Welcome to HFY Vanguard, where humanity meets the impossible. Tonight, a reborn alien girl opens her eyes, and her very first touch is with a human man. Let's begin the story. Ethan Miller wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve, smearing faint streaks of grease across the already stained yellow fabric of his maintenance uniform. His cleaning cart rattled along the sterile corridor of Nexus station wheels, squeaking slightly against the polished alloy floor. Overhead, the lights buzzed faintly, and the hum of the station's life support systems reverberated through the walls like a constant mechanical heartbeat. Nexus Station hung in orbit above the swirling storms of the gas giant Theris, its massive bulk serving as a hub for 17 alien species. Traders, scientists, diplomats, and mercenaries alike passed through the station's gleaming halls. Each day was a dance of cultural exchange and silent tension, an interstellar community held together by treaties and commerce rather than genuine trust. And in all of this, Ethan was invisible. The aliens that bustled past him scarcely gave him a second glance. To them, he was nothing more than another human grunt, one of thousands shipped off-world after Earth's economic collapse. Humanity had entered the galactic community not as pioneers, but as cheap labor. Ethan, once a promising engineering student with a mind for design and innovation, had been reduced to scrubbing alien waste from bulkheads. The irony gnawed at him daily, though he rarely let it show. His datapad beeped sharply. Maintenance request section 42B, biohazard cleanup required. Fantastic, Ethan muttered under his breath, pushing the cart forward. Another day, another alien mess. Section 42B was rarely used, at least rarely by people of his clearance level. His badge usually got him into every quarter except for the highly restricted military sectors. As he approached the access panel, he swiped his badge lazily, expecting the door to remain stubbornly locked. Instead, the panel blinked red twice before the station's AI spoke in its calm, synthetic voice. Emergency override initiated. Containment breach detected. Maintenance access granted. Ethan frowned. That's new. The door hissed open with a whisper of pressurized air, revealing not the anticipated chaos of a biohazard spill, but a pristine laboratory bathed in cool blue light. Rows of advanced equipment lined the walls, each console glowing softly with unreadable alien symbols. The room was immaculate, untouched by the grime he had expected to clean. "Hello," Ethan called cautiously, his voice echoing in the empty chamber. "Anyone here?" Silence. He pushed his cart further inside, the squeak of its wheels sounding absurdly loud in the sterile space. His eyes were drawn to the center of the room where a cylindrical tank stood filled with luminescent fluid that pulsed faintly as though alive. Curiosity tugged at him, despite his better judgment. Leaving his cart behind, he approached the tank slowly. Suspended within the glowing liquid was what appeared to be a severed hand, a slender, delicate appendage, skin tinted an otherworldly shade of pale blue. Ethan's stomach turned. "What the hell?" The hand twitched. He stumbled back, nearly tripping over his own feet. The tank bubbled furiously, the liquid glowing brighter, until the whole chamber was awash with azure light. His pulse hammered in his ears as he watched the impossible unfold before his eyes. Cells multiplied, knitting together with terrifying speed. Bone extended outward from the wrist muscles, weaving themselves around the growing structure. Tissue, sinew, and skin formed, stretching to cover the emerging shape. Within minutes, the hand became an arm, then a shoulder, then a torso. "Holy shit," Ethan whispered, unable to tear his eyes away. The transformation accelerated. Legs extended, a rib cage expanded, and organs pulsed with sudden life. Skin smoothed over the figure, the same pale blue shade as the hand. A slender female form took shape, curled in the fetal position. White strands of hair materialized, floating ethereally in the fluid like silk caught in water. The tank's alarms beeped frantically as the process neared completion. With a mechanical hiss, the fluid drained rapidly, leaving the naked figure lying on a platform as the glass cylinder retracted into the floor. She was beautiful in an alien, unsettling way. Delicate features, high cheekbones, luminous skin faintly glowing beneath the lights. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths as if inhaling air for the first time in years. Ethan froze, mop still clutched in his hand like a makeshift weapon. Her eyes snapped open. They were an electric blue so bright they seemed to cut through him. She gasped sharply, her gaze darting wildly around the room before landing on him. For a suspended heartbeat, they simply stared at one another, two strangers bound together by the impossible. She tried to speak, her voice cracked, vocal cords newly formed and untested. "Wh- Who, who are you?" Her trembling hand reached toward him, fingers splayed in desperation. Ethan's instincts warred within him. Part of him screamed to run to alert security to get as far away from this nightmare as possible. Another part, the deeper human part, saw the terror in her eyes and could not abandon her. He forced his voice steady. "My name's Ethan. I'm just a maintenance worker." Her hand trembled harder. She was shivering, vulnerable, her body still adjusting to existence. Without thinking, Ethan grabbed a sterile sheet from a nearby medical tray and stepped forward. "Here," he said softly, draping it over her bare shoulders. "You're on Nexus Station. Safe for now." Her grip shot out, clutching his wrist with surprising strength. "Nexus," she whispered hoarsely. "That's not possible." Nexus was destroyed. The Cygnus conflict. Ethan blinked. The war ended 3 years ago. Nexus was rebuilt. Horror dawned on her face. 3 years? I've been gone for 3 years. "You've been more than Jan," Ethan replied quietly, nodding toward the drain tank. "When I walked in here, you were just a hand." She stared down at herself, flexing her fingers with disbelief. Her voice steadied slightly. "The restoration technology, it worked." Her eyes met his with fragile intensity. "My name is Luara. I was a researcher here before the explosion." A distant alarm began to sound, echoing through the lab. Luara's grip on him tightened painfully. "We need to leave," she hissed urgently. "If they know I'm alive, they'll kill me again. And this time they won't leave a hand behind." The door to the lab slid open with a hiss. Ethan instinctively pulled Luara behind him, raising his mop like a ridiculous weapon, as a tall, spindly alien with copper-toned skin and 4 eyes stepped through. The figure wore the white coat of a senior scientist, silver insignia gleaming on his chest. The alien froze, all 4 eyes widening. "By the 7 moons," he whispered. Luara's voice cracked with relief and suspicion at once. "Alen." The alien snapped the door shut behind him, locking it manually. His upper eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of distress in his species. "Luara." By the void it worked. "But we don't have time. Ventec is watching everything." Ethan kept the mop raised. "Stay back." "She says someone tried to kill her." "Why should I believe you're not one of them?" Kalen's gaze flicked from Ethan to Luara. "Because I've been monitoring this chamber for 3 years, waiting, hoping this day would come. But Ventec won't allow it. If they discover she's alive, they'll erase both of you without hesitation." The alarm grew louder, reverberating through the walls. Luara swayed her legs unsteady. Ethan caught her instinctively, his arms sliding around her waist. Her skin was shockingly warm, almost feverish. She looked up at him, eyes glowing faintly. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them take me." Ethan swallowed hard, his world spinning. 5 minutes ago, he'd been nothing more than a janitor, invisible to everyone. Now he was holding the hand of a woman resurrected from death itself, standing between her and a corporation willing to kill to control her. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he knew he would not abandon her. The shrill alarm reverberated through the laboratory walls, echoing in Ethan's skull like a war drum. He tightened his grip on Luara's arm, holding her upright as Dr. Kalen darted across the room to a security console. The copper-skinned alien's 4 eyes scanned the displays frantically, his long fingers dancing across the controls. "They'll be here in minutes," Kalen hissed, voice taut with urgency. "We have to move." "Not until you explain." Ethan shot back, his mop still raised. His heart hammered in his chest, adrenaline surging. "Who the hell are you, and why should we trust you?" Kalen's lower eyes flicked toward him, the upper pair blinking rapidly in agitation. "I am Dr. Kalen, senior researcher on the regenerative project. I've safeguarded Luara's chamber since the explosion, hidden its true function from Ventec's audits. But their surveillance grows tighter. The regeneration sequence triggered their sensors. We have no time for debate." Luara's electric blue eyes locked onto Kalen. "You said you were monitoring me." Her voice was stronger now, tinged with suspicion. "For 3 years, then why didn't you stop them?" Why didn't you save the others? Pain flickered across the alien's features. Because I couldn't. Ventec has weaponized everything. Your research, your algorithms, even the prototype cells. I barely managed to keep your chamber hidden disguised as an experimental waste disposal unit. If I had interfered further, they would have discovered everything. Ethan's grip on the mop loosened slightly. He could hear the sincerity or perhaps the desperation in Kalen's tone, but doubt gnawed at him. Weaponized, he asked. What the hell are you talking about? Luara answered before Kalen could. Her hand still trembling from the strain of rebirth tightened around Ethan's wrist. The regenerative technology was meant to heal, to regrow limbs, repair organs, reverse catastrophic injuries. We could have ended suffering across species. Her voice hardened, her words spilling out like bitter glass. But Ventec wanted soldiers who could walk through fire, whose wounds sealed faster than bullets could pierce them. They demanded I adapt my research for warfare. When I refused, they silenced me. Her gaze darkened. They destroyed Nexus to bury the evidence. Ethan's stomach churned. He wasn't a soldier, but he'd seen enough to know what that meant. An army of regenerating, unkillable soldiers. He could almost imagine the battlefield's corpses, rising limbs, reknitting mid-fight mercenaries sold to the highest bidder. Kalen slammed his palm against the console, overriding the chamber's systems. The alarm shifted pitch. Security drones are en route. We cannot linger. He turned, cloak swirling behind him. If you care about survival, follow me. Ethan looked at Luara. Her fragile body trembled beneath the sterile sheet, yet her eyes blazed with defiance. He's right, she said softly. If Ventec finds me, they won't just kill me again. They'll dismantle me, piece by piece. And anyone who's seen me will share my fate. Her gaze lingered on Ethan. The janitor swallowed hard. The mop felt absurd in his hand, but he tightened his grip on it anyway. Fine, lead the way. They slipped into the corridor, Kalen moving swiftly ahead with long strides. Ethan pushed his cleaning cart. Luara slumped against it as if ill. Her slender body pressed close to his arm, the faint warmth of her skin seeping through his sleeve. Every so often, her eyes flicked up to his, and something unspoken passed between them. Food poisoning, Colleen Papa said loudly as a security drone glided by, its red sensor scanning them, taking this poor worker to medical. Fragile human digestion. The drone paused, scanned them again, then drifted onward without comment. Ethan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was close, he muttered. Too close, Luara whispered, her lips almost brushing his ear as she leaned against him. They'll keep hunting. There's no safety on this station. Her scent reached him, a strange, intoxicating blend of ozone and flowers. Ethan shook his head, trying to focus. She was alien. She was a fugitive, and yet he felt a gravitational pull toward her, as if their encounter had triggered something inevitable. Colleen led them through a maze of maintenance corridors, deliberately avoiding populated sectors. The further they descended, the more the pristine white halls gave way to exposed pipes, dim lighting, and the industrial underbelly of Nexus Station. Ethan felt oddly at home here among the hum of machinery and the scent of oil. At last they reached a small storage hatch. Kalen keyed it open, revealing a narrow service elevator. This leads to the maintenance levels. We'll be less conspicuous there. The elevator groaned as it descended. Luara swayed on her feet, clutching Ethan's arm tightly. He steadied her, one hand brushing against the smooth curve of her waist. The touch jolted him, sending heat rushing to his face. You're warm, he murmured without thinking. Her lips curved faintly. So are you. It's grounding. Their eyes met, the charged silence stretching between them until Kalen cleared his throat pointedly. We have larger concerns than adolescent infatuation, the alien scientist snapped. Ethan scowled. Hey, I'm 34. Which makes your behavior even more concerning, Kalen retorted dryly. Luara's faint laugh broke the tension, a sound like bells ringing through static. Ethan found himself smiling despite the situation. The elevator stopped with a jolt. Ethan guided Luara into his quarters, a compact single room, barely large enough for a bed, a desk, and a tiny washroom. He had never felt embarrassed by his Spartan living conditions before, but now with her luminous presence filling the space, the room seemed almost pitiful. It's cozy, Luara said diplomatically, lowering herself onto the bed. It's secure, Kalen corrected immediately, commandeering Ethan's terminal. I'll access departure schedules. Find us a way off this cursed station. Ethan rummaged through his meager supplies, producing protein bars, a med kit, and a change of clothes. He handed the food to Luara, who studied the wrapper curiously before nibbling at it. Her electric blue gaze fixed on him and, "You're calm," she observed softly. "Too calm. Most beings would be panicking." Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Humans adapt. Yesterday I was scrubbing toilets. Today I'm hiding a fugitive alien scientist. Tomorrow, who knows?" Luara tilted her head, studying him with scientific fascination. "That's what makes your species remarkable. You bend, but you don't break." Her eyes lingered on his broad shoulders, her tone softening. "And you're physically resilient as well. I studied human DNA before everything. Ventec wanted my research because of your adaptability. You survive conditions that would kill most species. You heal faster, endure longer. You evolve." Her gaze dipped lower, tracing the contours of his arms. "And you're aesthetically unique." Ethan felt heat rising in his cheeks. "Now you're just flattering me." She smiled faintly. "No, I'm stating fact." The air thickened between them, charged with something more than curiosity. Kalen broke the moment. "I've found a cargo transport leaving in 6 hours. Its captain owes me a favor. If we can reach the docking bay, we'll be safe." 6 hours. Ethan frowned. "We're supposed to stay hidden that long." "We must," Callan said grimly. "I'll make arrangements. Stay here. Don't draw attention." And his gaze flicked to Ethan, then to Luara. "Take care of her. She is more important than you realize." He left swiftly, the door hissing shut behind him. For a moment, silence filled the room. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Luara sat on his bed, her posture regal despite her exhaustion. She looked simultaneously ancient and newborn, a being with memories spanning decades trapped in a body only hours old. "I should rest," she admitted quietly, her eyes weary. "But I'm afraid. What if I sleep and never wake? What if this body fails?" Ethan sat beside her, close enough to feel the faint warmth radiating from her skin. Without thinking, he took her hand. "It won't fail. You're here. You're real. I can feel you." Her fingers intertwined with his, a spark running up his arm at the contact. "In my culture, this is intimate," she murmured. "I can stop," Ethan said quickly. "No." She shook her head, squeezing his hand. "It's comforting." Her other hand rose tentatively, tracing the line of his jaw with feather-light touches. "You were the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes. In some ways, you're the only constant in this new life." The air between them grew heavy, thick with unspoken emotion. Ethan found himself leaning closer, drawn by a force he couldn't name. Their lips met, tentative at first, then deepening with growing urgency. Her kiss was unlike anything he had ever known. Warm, electric, tinged with sweetness that defied description. He pulled her closer, his hand pressing against the small of her back. She melted against him, her fingers tangling in his hair. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "That was," Ethan began, "a human custom I've always wanted to try." Luara finished, her eyes glowing softly. "And now I understand why." The sound of the door sliding open startled them apart. Dr. Kalen burst inside, his copper skin darkened with stress, his eyes wide. "We have a problem, a serious one." Dr. Kalen's entrance shattered the fragile intimacy that had bloomed in Ethan's quarters. His four eyes darted between the human and the reborn alien scientist, and for a moment Ethan thought the alien was about to scold them for their closeness. But Kalen's voice came out, taut with urgency. "The cargo transport has been delayed, sabotage most likely. Ventec knows. They've unleashed hunter drones. We must move before they triangulate her location." Luara stiffened. Her glowing eyes flicked toward the ceiling as though she could already sense the machines. "Hunter drones," she whispered, her voice tinged with fear. "They'll track my bioelectric signature. Once they catch my trail, there's no escaping." Ethan's hand instinctively closed over hers, grounding her. Then we run before they get close enough." Kalen's upper eyes blinked rapidly. "Run, human, you cannot comprehend what we face. These drones were banned under interstellar law. They are faster than any patrol equipped with cutting-edge sensors and programmed to terminate on sight. They won't stop until they've incinerated her. Ethan rose to his feet, jaw set. Then we find a way to stop them. The copper-skinned scientist studied him for a long moment, then inclined his head slightly. You are reckless. But perhaps recklessness is exactly what we need. They left the cramped quarters behind, moving swiftly through the dim maintenance quarters. Ethan led them through the labyrinthine service tunnels. He knew better than most. After all, he'd spent years cleaning them. The exposed pipes, leaking coolant, and flickering lights had always felt like prison bars before reminders of his lowly status. But now these same passages became shields masking them from the all-seeing eyes of Ventec. Luara leaned heavily against him as they walked her steps, unsteady. Her body was still adjusting to existence, and every few minutes she faltered, forcing Ethan to support more of her weight. He didn't mind. Each time her arms slipped around his shoulders, each time her slender body pressed against his side, he felt something stir deep within him, a fierce protectiveness, a desire to shield her from every danger. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. Once her voice so soft it almost blended with the hum of the conduits. Ethan glanced down at her, catching the faint glow of her eyes in the half-light. "Because you needed help, and because no one else would." A faint smile tugged at her lips. Humans. Always stubborn. He squeezed her hand briefly. Damn right. Kalen guided them into an abandoned hydroponics bay, its lights long since stripped, the air damp and faintly metallic. Overgrown vines clung stubbornly to the walls, remnants of forgotten experiments. "We'll hide here until I can reroute the drone's search grid," Kalen said, moving quickly to an access panel. "It will buy us minutes at most." Minutes, not hours. Ethan helped Luara lower herself onto a bench, brushing stray white strands of hair from her face. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dark bioluminescence, pulsing in rhythm with her shallow breaths. She looked fragile, breakable. Yet when her eyes met his, he saw steel behind them. "I shouldn't be here," she murmured. "I was supposed to be dead. My research was supposed to die with me." "You're here now," Ethan said firmly. "And maybe there's a reason for that." Her hand slipped into his again, her fingers cold but strong. "Maybe the reason is you," she whispered. The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken possibility, until a shrill beep from Kalen's console shattered it. "They've locked onto her trail," Kalen snapped. "Multiple drones converging on this sector. We must move now." The sound came first, a low, metallic skittering, echoing through the hydroponic chamber like claws on steel. Ethan's pulse spiked as red lights pierced the gloom, sweeping back and forth across the walls. "Go," Callan barked. Ethan grabbed Luara's hand and pulled her into the shadows weaving between the thick vines as the first drone crawled into view. It resembled a mechanical spider, 8 legs tipped with razor-sharp talons, its body bristling with sensors. Its glowing core pulsed with menace. The machine paused, scanning. "Stay low," Ethan hissed, pulling Luara behind a crumbling nutrient tank. The drone clicked, then fired a beam of scarlet light across the room, scanning the air for trace bioelectric signatures. Luara shuddered against him. The light swept dangerously close, brushing across Ethan's shoulder before sliding past. Kalen activated a decoy emitter from his wrist device, releasing a sudden pulse of energy. The drone screeched and darted toward the false signal. "Run," Kalen shouted. They bolted through a side corridor, Ethan half-dragging, half-carrying Luara. The pounding of metal legs echoed behind them as more drones joined the hunt. They reached a service ladder. Up, Ethan ordered, helping Luara grasp the rungs. He climbed behind her, pushing her upward as Kalen covered their escape with another pulse of decoy energy. A laser blast seared past Ethan's shoulders, scorching the ladder. He hissed in pain, forcing himself upward. The smell of ozone filled the air. They burst into another corridor, only to be cut off by a drone dropping from the ceiling, its talons clanging against the deck. Ethan didn't think. He swung his mop. The makeshift weapon struck the drone's sensor array with a crack, stunning it for a precious second. "Move," he yelled. Kalen hurled a shock charge, frying the drone's circuits. Sparks cascaded across the corridor as the machine collapsed, twitching. Luara stumbled forward, clutching Ethan's arm. Her luminous eyes widened with alarm as she noticed the scorch mark on his uniform. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," Ethan grunted, but the burning pain in his shoulder told him otherwise. They reached a sealed maintenance bay. Ethan keyed in his override codes and the heavy door slid open. Inside the chamber was dark, filled with crates and old machinery. Kalen sealed the door behind them, his chest heaving. "That will hold them for a few minutes," he said grimly. Ethan slumped against the wall, pressing a hand to his scorched shoulder. The burn had eaten through fabric and flesh, leaving an angry wound. Blood seeped between his fingers. Luara dropped to her knees beside him, panic flashing across her face. "He's bleeding badly," she said urgently. "He needs regenerative treatment. Now." "We don't have it," Kalen snapped. "All med kits were confiscated months ago. Without proper equipment, he won't die." Luara interrupted, her voice trembling but resolute. "Not if I act." Her electric blue eyes locked on Ethan's. "There is a way. My species can transfer regenerative abilities, but it creates a bond, permanent, unbreakable." Ethan's mind spun. Pain blurred his vision. "Bond," he rasped. "Yes," she said softly, cupping his face with trembling hands. "Our life forces intertwined, always connected, always aware. If I do this, we will never be separate again." He searched her gaze, seeing both fear and fierce determination there. His heart pounded. Part of him screamed that this was insane. Another part, the deeper, stubbornly human part, knew the decision had already been made the moment he chose not to abandon her. "Do it," he whispered. Luara pressed one hand against his wound, the other against his chest. Her skin glowed with radiant light, the bioluminescence spreading in intricate patterns across her body. Energy surged into Ethan like liquid fire. He gasped, arching against the wall, as agony and ecstasy blended into one. Every nerve in his body lit up, burning with power. Memories not his own flickered through his mind: Luara's childhood under twin moons, her years of research, the explosion that had stolen her first life. At the same time, his own memories flowed into her. Earth's crumbling cities, the humiliation of becoming a janitor, the bitterness of wasted potential, and then the moment he first saw her in the tank, reborn from nothing. The bond locked into place with a final surge of light. Ethan's wound knitted closed before his eyes, muscle and skin regenerating as if time itself reversed. He gasped, trembling, and when his vision cleared, he saw Luara staring at him with wonder. "I feel you," he whispered. "Not just here." He touched his chest. "Everywhere." She nodded, tears glistening in her luminous eyes. "We are one now." Kalin stared at them both, his four eyes wide. "By the void. The first human-Nari bond in history. Do you have any idea what this means?" Ethan ignored him, pulling Luara into his arms. Her warmth seeped into him, her presence filling his mind as surely as her body filled his embrace. "It means we're in this together," he said simply. Her lips curved into a faint, radiant smile. "Yes, together." Ethan's body still thrummed with residual energy, his cells tingling as if the very essence of him had been rewritten. Every heartbeat carried with it an echo not entirely his own. Luara's presence filled him, warm, vibrant, undeniable. She was no longer just beside him. She was within him, a pulse of life intertwined with his own. Her white hair glowed faintly in the dim light of the maintenance bay, drifting around her face as though caught in invisible currents. She looked exhausted, trembling from the strain of the transfer, yet her eyes blazed with electric fire. "Are you?" Ethan began. "I'm fine," she interrupted, though her voice wavered. "The bonding takes much, but it is done. You are healed." He touched his shoulder, where the wound had been. Smooth, unblemished skin met his fingertips, as though the injury had never existed. The realization sent a shiver down his spine. "You risked everything," he murmured, "for me." She smiled faintly, her hand brushing against his cheek. "You were the first face I saw when I opened my eyes. I couldn't let that be the last." Their bond thrummed, amplifying the sincerity of her words until Ethan felt it in his bones. It wasn't just affection, it was something deeper, primal, sacred. Before either could speak further, Kalen cleared his throat sharply. "As touching as this moment may be, we are still hunted. Ventec will not relent simply because you've become lovers." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "What's our next move?" Kalen activated a holomap from his wrist device. "The hunter drones are swarming this sector. Our only hope is the shuttle bay. There's a maintenance craft in Bay 4, small but fast. If we can reach it, I can plot a course to the Helios outpost. From there, we can disappear. Disappear, Ethan echoed. That doesn't sound like a plan. That sounds like running forever. Sometimes survival is the plan, Kalen replied curtly. Laura squeezed Ethan's hand. If we escape, I can expose Ventec's crimes. But we must live first. They navigated the labyrinthine maintenance tunnels, their footsteps echoing against steel. With each step, Ethan felt their bond strengthening. It wasn't telepathy exactly, but a deep awareness. A tug in his chest, whenever her emotions surged, a faint whisper of thought brushing against his own. At one point, she stumbled, her legs still weak from her rebirth. Ethan caught her instantly, steadying her against his chest. The spark of their connection flared, flooding him with her frustration and embarrassment. You don't have to carry this alone, he whispered. Her luminous eyes lifted to his. But I am the reason you're in danger. And I'm the reason you're still alive, he countered softly. We're even. Her answering smile was small but radiant, a fragile beacon in the darkness of their flight. The corridor opened into a junction. Kalen raised a hand signaling silence. From beyond the intersection came the metallic scrape of claws on steel. Drones. Kalen cursed softly. They're too close. We need a diversion. Ethan's eyes darted to a panel of coolant pipes overhead. If I rupture that line, it'll flood the corridor with vapor. They won't be able to scan through it. Kalen's brow furrowed. You'd risk freezing us alive. Better cold than dead, Ethan shot back. He grabbed a nearby wrench, slamming it into the valve. Super-cooled vapor hissed into the air, filling the junction with a thick, icy fog. The temperature plummeted instantly, crystals forming on the walls. The drones skittered into the fog, their sensors clicking wildly as their vision faltered. Ethan pulled Luara close, shielding her body with his own, as they slipped past unseen. Her warmth seeped into him through the bond, a stark contrast to the biting chill around them. When they emerged on the other side, Luara's teeth were chattering. Ethan rubbed her arms, trying to restore some warmth. You burn so hot, she whispered faintly, like a star. He chuckled, though his heart hammered at the intimacy of her words. And you glow like one. At last, they reached Bay 4. Through the viewport, the small shuttle gleamed in the docking cradle, its hull scuffed but functional. Hope surged in Ethan's chest. But hope died quickly. 3 Ventec guards stood at the bay entrance, clad in sleek black armor rifles ready. Their stance was casual, but their eyes were sharp, scanning the corridor. Security checkpoint, Kalen muttered. We cannot bluff past them. They'll scan her instantly. Ethan's grip on the mop, still absurdly in his hands, tightened. Then we need another trick. Luara stepped forward, determination hardening her features. I can create one. She placed her palm against the nearby control panel. Energy flowed from her fingertips, her skin glowing brighter. Sparks leapt across the circuits as she interfaced directly with the station's systems. Within seconds, alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the bay as the fire suppression system activated. White foam burst from the ceiling, cascading over the guards like a tidal wave. Now, Ethan shouted. They charged. The guards floundered in the foam, their rifles slipping from their grasp. Ethan barreled into the first, slamming the mop handle across the man's visor. The soldier crumpled, stunned. Kalen lunged at another, surprisingly agile for his thin frame, and jabbed a shock baton into the guard's chest. The alien convulsed and collapsed. The third managed to raise his rifle, aiming directly at Luara. Ethan's world narrowed to that single sight. He hurled himself forward, tackling the guard with raw force. They crashed to the ground, the rifle skittering away. The guard swung a fist, but Ethan caught his arm and slammed his forehead into the man's visor, cracking it. With a final grunt, Ethan wrenched the guard's helmet aside and drove the mop's jagged end into his exposed throat. The man gurgled, then went still. Breathing hard, Ethan rose to his feet. Foam dripped from his uniform, streaked with crimson. He turned to Luara. Are you... I'm fine, she said, her voice trembling with relief. Because of you. Their eyes locked, the bond between them flaring with heat and gratitude. For a moment, the chaos around them vanished. Kalen broke the spell. Into the shuttle now. The shuttle's engines roared to life as they strapped in. Kalen slid into the pilot's seat, his 4 eyes scanning the controls. Hold tight. The docking clamps released with a shudder. The small craft lurched forward, blasting into the void of space. Ethan slumped into his chair, adrenaline still coursing through him. Luara sat beside him, her hand finding his instinctively. Their bond pulsed with shared relief. But the moment didn't last. 3 pursuit vessels incoming, Kayleen announced grimly. Ventek security cruisers. They're heavily armed. Ethan grimaced. Can this thing outrun them? Not for long, Kalen admitted. But perhaps through the asteroid field. He adjusted their course and the shuttle dove toward the dense cluster of tumbling rocks ahead. The cruisers followed, their weapons charging. Luara's grip on Ethan's hand tightened. Through their bond, he felt her fear, but also her resolve. We're not going to die here, she whispered fiercely. He met her gaze, heart steadying. No, not as long as we're together. The shuttle plunged into the asteroid field, rocks spinning past at lethal speeds. Callan's hands flew across the controls, but the ship shuddered violently with every near miss. Ethan felt the bond flare again, awareness sharpening. He could sense Luara's focus, her instincts. It was as if her perception fused with his reflexes, guiding his hands, his decisions. Kellen, he said suddenly, let me fly. The scientist blinked. Are you insane? Maybe Ethan admitted sliding into the pilot's seat. But this bond gives me an edge. He gripped the controls, and for the first time in his life, flying felt natural. The shuttle danced between tumbling boulders, skimming within meters of spinning rock. Each maneuver felt less like instinct and more like destiny. The Ventek ships hesitated at the edge of the field, unwilling to risk pursuit. Ethan exhaled, exhilarated. Looks like we lost them. But Luara's hand pressed to his arm, her eyes glowing. No, this is only the beginning. The shuttle rattled violently as it emerged from the asteroid field. Ethan's knuckles whitened on the controls, but his movements were steady, precise. The bond still hummed between him and Luara, her calm determination feeding into his reflexes, steadying his hand whenever fear threatened to overwhelm him. Behind them, the Ventek cruisers lingered just beyond the asteroid belt, unwilling to follow. For a moment, silence filled the cramped shuttle cabin, broken only by the thrum of engines and the hiss of recycled air. We bought ourselves time, Kalin said, his tone grim. But not safety. His 4 eyes darted between sensor readouts. They'll predict our exit trajectory. They'll be waiting. Luara leaned forward, her hand resting gently on Ethan's arm. Then we don't give them the chance. He glanced at her, eyebrow raised. What are you suggesting? Her electric blue gaze burned with intensity. We cross into Terran space. The Confederation won't allow Ventek to pursue us openly. Kalen's lower eyes narrowed. A dangerous gamble. The Terrans have little love for corporate incursions, but they are not charitable. They will detain us, perhaps dissect your research to make it their own. Better detained than dead, Ethan said flatly. And at least I know my people aren't entirely corrupt. We can appeal to them. Luara squeezed his arm, and through the bond he felt her trust. You believe in them, so I will too. The shuttle's navigation display flared with red warnings as they approached the border. A grid of glowing beacons marked the edge of restricted Terran military space. Ethan's stomach clenched. He remembered enough of his days in the engineering corps to know what it meant to cross those lines uninvited. Here we go, he muttered, adjusting their trajectory. No sooner had the shuttle breached the boundary than a sleek Terran patrol vessel, decloaked before them, its dark hull bristling with weapon arrays. A stern voice crackled over comms. Unidentified vessel you have entered, restricted Terran Confederation space. Power down and prepare to be boarded or you will be destroyed. Ethan opened the comm, his voice steady. Terran Patrol, this is Ethan Miller, Earth Citizen ID 47291A, requesting emergency asylum from corporate persecution. We have evidence of Ventek crimes and vital research of interest to the Confederation. A long silence followed. Ethan's heart pounded. Through the bond, Luara's emotions mingled with his fear, hope, and something deeper, a fierce pride in his courage. Finally, the voice replied. Identity confirmed. Ethan Miller, formerly Engineering Corps. You are cleared to dock with the TCS Vigilant. Any attempt at evasion will result in destruction. As the patrol ship extended a docking tube, Ethan caught Kalen staring at him. Engineering Corps, the alien repeated slowly. Ethan shrugged. Janitor was simpler to explain. Luara's soft laugh brushed his mind through the bond. You continue to surprise me, Ethan Miller. The airlock hissed open and Terran Marines poured in, armor-gleaming rifles raised. At their head stood Commander Pierce, a weathered man with silver temples and eyes sharp as knives. Miller Pierce's voice carried equal parts disbelief and authority. I thought you died at Proxima. Not dead, Ethan said with a wry smile. Just cleaning up other people's messes. Pierce's gaze shifted to Luara, her glowing eyes unflinching even under marine rifles. His expression hardened. "And who is this?" Dr. Luara of the Nari Ethan said firmly. "And Dr. Kalin. They have evidence of Ventec's crimes, including attempted genocide and illegal weapons development." Pierce studied them for a long, tense moment before finally gesturing. "Secure them. We'll sort this out." As Marines moved to separate them, Luara's fear surged through the bond like ice water. Ethan's hand shot out, gripping hers. "We stay together," he said, voice firm. Pierce raised a brow. "That's not protocol." "Protocol doesn't account for bonding," Ethan replied evenly. "Our physiologies are linked. Separate us and you risk killing us both." It wasn't entirely true, but Pierce didn't need to know that. The commander's eyes narrowed. Then slowly he nodded. "Very well. You stay together, but you are under guard." The secure quarters aboard the Vigilant were sparse but clean, a stark contrast to Ethan's dingy maintenance room. Through the viewport, the asteroid field shimmered distant flashes, marking the clash between Ventec and Terran ships. Luara sat beside him on the narrow bunk, her fingers intertwined with his. Through the bondor, her unease pulsed. "They'll want my research," she murmured. "They'll protect it," Ethan said, though he wasn't entirely sure. "The Confederation isn't Ventec." Her luminous gaze searched his. "You sound certain." "I have to be," he admitted. Their conversation was cut short when Pierce entered Kalin, trailing behind him. The copper-skinned scientist looked rattled, but strangely pleased. "Your alien friends brought quite the story," Pierce said without preamble. He activated a holographic display revealing Ventec's crimes, illegal weapons tests, treaty violations, assassinations of whistleblowers. "We suspected but lacked proof. Until now." Luara stepped forward, chin high. "Then you'll shut them down." Pierce's expression hardened. "Yes. Ventec will be dismantled in Confederation space. Your research will be safeguarded. For medical use only." Relief surged through the bond, flowing from Luara into Ethan like a wave of warmth. For the first time, hope seemed possible. But it didn't last. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring. Over comms, a frantic voice called out, "Multiple hostile vessels inbound Ventec insignia. They've breached restricted space." Pierce's jaw tightened. "Battle stations?" He turned to Ethan and Luara. "Stay here." This just became complicated. The viewport filled with the sight of 3 massive Ventec cruisers surrounding the Vigilant. Their weapons glowed, targeting systems locked. Ethan's stomach dropped. "They're insane. Attacking Terran military space is suicide." "Unless they're desperate," Kalin said grimly. His eyes widened as he pointed. "Look." On the central Ventec vessel, a familiar figure paced the bridge, Director Malin. Luara's gasp echoed Ethan's own. Rage burned through the bond. "He survived," she whispered, "and he's here." As if in response, the Ventec cruisers opened fire not on the Vigilant's hull, but on its communications array. "They're trying to cut us off from command," Ethan realized aloud. "If they stop the evidence from transmitting, they can claim jurisdiction." "Spin this as corporate justice," Kalin finished grimly. Ethan's instinct screamed, "We have to protect the data core. That's what they'll go for." The door had been locked from the outside, but Luara pressed her glowing palm against the panel. Energy surged, and with a hiss, the door slid open. She gave Ethan a small, fierce smile. "Advantages of bonding with me." They ran. The ship shuddered under bombardment as they raced through its quarters, alarms flashing. Marines barked orders. Crew scrambled to battle stations. Through the bond, Ethan felt Luara's awareness sharpen her senses, extending into the ship itself. "Malin is here," she gasped. "A boarding party, 6 guards, heading for the core." Ethan's pulse spiked. Then so are we. They reached the data core chamber just as the bulkhead began to glow red, cutting torches biting into the metal. Ethan slammed his hand against the security panel, focusing on the bond. To his shock, the circuits lit beneath his palm, responding to his will. The door sealed tighter, lockdown engaged. He turned to Luara wide-eyed. "I can feel it. I can control it." She smiled faintly, pride warming through the bond. "The bonding works both ways. My abilities are yours now." Outside, the torches cut deeper. Sparks spraying. Malin's voice barked to commands, muffled but clear breakthrough. The evidence must be destroyed. Inside, Luara connected to the core, her glow intensifying as data streamed, transmitting. Everything. Their crimes, the proof, my research, all of it. Ethan stood before her mop, discarded a Ventec rifle gripped in both hands. He would hold the line until his last breath. The door began to give way. Ethan looked back at Luara, her glowing hair fanned around her body radiant with energy. Whatever happens, I'm glad I was the janitor assigned to clean that lab. Her blue hand rose to his cheek, her voice soft yet fierce. And I'm glad yours was the first face I saw in my new life. The bulkhead screeched, molten metal dripping as it split. Ventec guards poured through, only to freeze at the sound of a new voice echoing across comms. Attention, Ventec forces. This is Commander Pierce of the TCS Vigilant. Your vessels are surrounded by 3 Terran battlecruisers. The evidence of your crimes has been transmitted to Terran Command. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Through the fractured doorway, Ethan saw Malin's face contort with fury, but slowly, reluctantly, he gave the order to stand down. 6 months later, the world looked different. The Terran capital gleamed beneath an endless sky of pale gold, its towers stretching heavenward like monuments to human ambition. The scars of Earth's economic collapse still lingered, but now there was a sense of renewal in the air. Whispers of a future no longer chained to survival alone. At the heart of this transformation stood the work of a single alien scientist and the human janitor who refused to let her die. Luara stood in a pristine laboratory, her pale blue skin glowing under the white lights, her luminous eyes calm and confident. Before a panel of Terran medical experts, she extended her hand over a severed limb suspended in a stasis field. Energy rippled from her fingertips, her bioluminescence intensifying. Before their eyes, muscle, bone, and skin began knitting together in perfect harmony. The experts leaned forward, eyes wide. One whispered in awe, "Controlled regeneration impossible." "It is possible," Luara replied, her voice steady, filled with quiet pride. "And it will save lives. Soldiers maimed in battle, civilians injured in disasters, children born with conditions once thought incurable. This technology will give them back what they have lost." Applause broke out across the chamber. Ethan watched from the observation window, his heart swelling with pride. 6 months ago, she had been nothing but a hand in a tank, fragile and terrified. Now she stood tall, living testament to resilience, defiance, and hope. Through the bond, he felt her pride mingling with his own. "This is our work," her mental voice brushed against his thoughts. "Yours as much as mine." He smiled faintly. "I just mopped up the mess. You're the miracle." Her amusement warmed through their bond. "You still underestimate yourself, Ethan Miller." After the demonstration, Luara joined him at the window overlooking the Capitol. She reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. Her touch was as familiar now as his own heartbeat. "You know," she said softly, "when I first awoke, I thought I was alone, that the world had moved on without me. And then I saw you." Ethan chuckled. "You thought I was your executioner at first." Her lips curved into a sly smile. "Perhaps, but then you covered me with a sheet. Not a weapon, not a cage, just kindness. That moment meant more than you can imagine." "I can imagine," he murmured, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Because I felt it too." Their bond thrummed and the air between them seemed to shimmer. For a moment, the bustling city below disappeared. There was only her, only them. Durkoilin entered, his copper-toned skin catching the light, his 4 eyes calm but weary. "The Council is convinced," he said, his voice carrying both relief and caution. "The Confederation will protect your research. Ventec is dismantled. Malin rots in a prison cell." Ethan exhaled slowly. "It's over then." But Kaylin's upper eyes blinked rapidly, betraying unease. "Over hardly. Ventec was only one corporation. Others watched. Others will covet what you have built. Power always hungers." Luara's grip on Ethan's hand tightened. "Let them covet. This time we are not alone." Ethan met Kaylin's gaze, his voice firm. "And this time humanity won't stand by and let corporations decide the future." For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Kaylin's expression softened. "Perhaps. You humans are unpredictable. That may be your greatest strength." That night, Ethan and Luara returned to their shared quarters overlooking the Capitol skyline. The room was far from the dingy maintenance bunk he had once called home. This one was spacious, filled with books, data pads, and equipment. Yet for Ethan, it was the small things that mattered: the scent of her hair when she leaned against him, the glow of her bioluminescence as she drifted to sleep, the steady rhythm of her breath syncing with his. As they stood by the window, she leaned into him. "You said once that humans adapt, that it's what you do best." He nodded, his arms sliding around her waist. "It's our specialty." Her blue eyes shimmered with emotion. "Then maybe that is why I love you. Because no other species could have adapted to me so completely, to bond with me, to accept me." Ethan turned, pressing his forehead gently against hers. "And maybe I love you because you forced me to see that being a janitor wasn't the end. It was just the beginning." Her laughter, soft and luminous, filled the room. That too, her voice teased through the bond. He kissed her, the city lights painting their silhouettes against the glass. Weeks later, the Confederation Senate gathered to ratify the official alliance with the Nari. Luara stood beside Ethan as the declaration was signed, her presence radiant and unflinching. Dr. Kayleen was appointed the first Nari ambassador, his 4 eyes gleaming with pride as the chamber erupted in applause. To the galaxy, it was a historic moment, a symbol of unity, progress, and hope. But Ethan knew better. This was only the beginning. Because in the shadows of the chamber, among the crowd of dignitaries, he caught sight of a pair of eyes watching them too closely. A corporate envoy expression, carefully neutral data pad in hand. Through the bond, Luara felt his unease. "What is it?" "We won today," he answered silently. "But someone else is already planning for tomorrow." Her fingers slipped into his, squeezing tightly. "Then we face tomorrow together." As the sun set over the Terran capital, Ethan stood at the window of their quarters. Luara pressed against his side. The golden light bathed her skin, making her glow even brighter. She tilted her head, studying him with a smile that was equal parts affection and challenge. "You know," she said, "I used to believe destiny was written in equations and algorithms, that everything could be calculated. But then I died, and you found me." Ethan's gaze softened. "So what do you believe now?" She leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. "That destiny is stubborn, like humans." He laughed, pulling her close. "Then destiny's got nothing on us." As their lips met, the city below erupted in lights, a living constellation mirroring the stars above. And in that moment, Ethan knew with absolute certainty that no matter what came next, whether corporate greed, political intrigue, or dangers yet unseen, they would endure. Because they had been bound not by chance, not by science, but by something far stronger. A janitor and a reborn alien scientist. 2 lives woven together by fate, by fire, by love. And together they would change the galaxy.